Now, at the beginning of the last century, more than half the world's oil was coming from the capital of Azerbaijan, Baku. Fortunes were made, and Baku was a boom town with magnificent boulevards and mansions. Living in one of those mansions was local oil baron Zeynalabdin Taghiyev. He became known as the father of the nation for his philanthropy. His public works included a girls' school, a national theatre, an opera house, and the city fire department. Taghiyev's world fell apart with the Russian Revolution. He lost his wealth, his property was confiscated, and his grand home became the National History Museum. After his death, the family were sent into exile, and his story was never mentioned. So, his great-grandson, Fuad Abdullayev, only found out the story of his illustrious ancestor bit by bit. He met reporter Sevinj Osmanqizi at the oil field near Baku, where Taghiyev first struck oil.
He started as a mason, then worked his way up to a master mason. After that, he became a contractor and invested in a kerosene plant. That's probably what led him to put his money into oil. It was 1873, and he was already 50 years old. At that age, people are usually starting to wind down, but he chose to make a leap into the unknown.
You know what I find fascinating is the fact that he himself was illiterate. I mean, he could not either read or write. How well prepared, how professional was he in this place?
There were certain things going on around him. There were other people buying land in the hope of finding oil. So his decision to buy land with two partners made good business sense. He bought a plot for 9,000 rubles. He invested in equipment and hired workers. Years went by without any success. His partners abandoned him. Then, after 5 years, in 1878, he struck oil, and he was suddenly one of the richest men in the Russian Empire.
It's interesting because when the Bolsheviks took power in 1920, everybody, I mean, all the wealthy people of Azerbaijan, they left. But Taghiyev stayed, and I wonder why he stayed.
He couldn't leave his native country, probably because he was so patriotic.
Taghiyev had a feeling that after so much he did for the country, nobody would harm him or his family. So he stayed, he did not leave the country. And he was given, in fact, freedom to choose where he will be staying, and he chose to stay in his summer cottage in Mardakan. But now we're going to a National History Museum, where that used to be once Taghiyev's own property, the 4-story mansion where the family lived up until 1920, when the Bolsheviks seized power in Baku, Azerbaijan. That was why, let's go. So we are now in the car, we're moving towards the History Museum, but I want to ask you, Fuad, please tell me what happened after he died?
He died in 1924, and even before the traditional 40 days of mourning were over, his family was kicked out of the house. That was his daughter Sarah, my grandmother, and her husband, my grandfather, together with their children, who included my mother. The family had to move to my other grandfather's house, and they lived there until 1941, when that grandfather was arrested and executed. My mother was summoned by the KGB and given 24 hours to leave the country. She had 3 kids. I was the youngest, only 1 year old. We went to Bashkiria in western Siberia.
When did you first come to learn who you are?
It was when I was 18 years old. I came to Baku and enrolled at the oil academy here. I had absolutely no idea about my family background.
Did your parents not tell you this on purpose?
That's what it was like then. It was wartime. Later I understood that they did the right thing. We were only children. We could have said something that would put us in danger. They had to do it for the sake of the family. They'd both suffered so much. That's why they were so frightened. They were scared of everything.
Can you please tell me how did it happen when you first was given this information? Was it a shock for you?
Imagine, I was just 18, really young, and all of a sudden I find out that we've all been under surveillance by the KGB. It wasn't a joke. It was 1958. My grandmother had been fired from her job the year before.
So she was a historian herself, and she tried to research or to write a dissertation. But could it possibly be published back then?
She had taken on what she herself called the unacceptable task of restoring her father's name.
to prove that her father was not as he was portrayed by the Soviet propaganda.
Absolutely right. And to show what kind of a businessman he really was, what kind of a man. He was portrayed as a vampire who used to suck the blood of his workers, but he wasn't like that at all.
Where did you find her? I mean, where was she living, this daughter of a well-known former millionaire?
She was living in a basement. There was a little window, and if you stood on tiptoe, you could see the feet of people walking past outside. That was the place my grandmother was renting.
But there were a lot of people who knew her father. I mean, I'm trying to think, like those people who received money, who started because of generous philanthropy of Taghiyev. There were a lot of people that Taghiyev helped. He helped them to educate, he helped them with shelter, he gave them bread, he gave them jobs. So was there any way she could incorporate those people?
That was the task she set herself. She'd collected testimonies from a lot of women who'd studied at the first school for Muslim girls, which he established. She wanted to document eyewitness reports while those people were still alive. She was worried that if she didn't, he would be remembered the way the Soviets wanted him remembered.
So you're saying that not only those who were sort of identified as enemies of the people suffered, but also those willing to help them also could be harmed, could suffer. Was that the case?
Of course. People were afraid of their own shadows. They even removed incriminating photographs from their albums. That's how scared they were.
We're only a few miles away from the History Museum. Just one quick question. If things went differently, that you, as one of the great-grandsons of Zeynalabdin Taghiyev, could be actually living in this place? Does it ever occur to you?
You know what? We're all formed by the environment we grow up in. When I returned to Baku, I was already a fully formed Soviet citizen. I had firm opinions about capitalism, royalty, and so on. I couldn't have lived in this palace, even if I had the chance. I never had ideas like that.
Okay, this way, please. And we can see here, right in front of the building, the monument to Zeynalabdin Taghiyev.
Yes, yes.
Something that you wouldn't possibly imagine in Soviet time.
Ну, конечно. Ну, конечно.
Looking back into the history of your family, and the whole family repressed, sent to Siberia, was it worth it? Do you feel sorry for your family, or are you proud?
Of course, it's an honor to know that you're connected to this history. But on the other hand, there's a feeling of sorrow. It's a story of broken lives, so my emotions are mixed. But there's also enormous pride that we had an ancestor who did so much for our nation, and he's not forgotten.
Fuad Abdullayev in Azerbaijan, ending today's Outlook. I'm Matthew Bannister. I'll be back at the same time tomorrow with another Outlook. Do join me then.